We'll see where Oren takes us, but get ready, and the guild starts soon. All right, so as I mentioned, welcome to the 8th gathering of the Guild Meetup. Today we'll be talking all about automation tools that are out there like Playwright, Cypress. Testim also came up with another tool called Playground, which I think helps you create Codeless type automation for Puppeteer and Playwright. So a lot of cool stuff here. And Oren is the founder of Testim.io. So really excited to have him, really good guy. If you've been to any on-site conferences, which you probably haven't in a while, but when you do, he's usually there working the booth at Testim. So if you do see him, say hello. But first, to get things going, I want to go over some things really quickly with you before we start our testing journey. To make this fun for everyone, I just ask that you participate. And the best way to do this is to chat in our chat or to ask questions for Oren. Like I said, he's an expert, so any automation question you have, he most likely can help you there as well. So just click the chat tab or the questions tab and just start getting your fingers warmed up to get your questions ready for Oren. I keep wanting to call him Rubin for some reason. Also, just so you know, we're 3 days away from the Perf Guild, which is our online conference dedicated 100% to performance testing. And because you're joining us at this meetup, you get $50 in guild coin, which means if you go to perfguild.com, type in guildcoin50, you will get $50 off your ticket price. So definitely check that out at perfguild.com. And also, even though this is an online event, we still have a code of ethics. You can check that out at guildconferences.com/code, which can be boiled down to just be awesome to one another. And most importantly, this edition of the Test Guild Meetup is sponsored by the folks at Testim. Testim wanted to give back to the community during this time of need, so make sure to check out their free community plan, which now includes 1,000 runs per month free. The runs last forever, but the offer won't. So make sure to sign up below. There should be a button down below called Register Now. Or if you see this on replay, I will have a link down below. Definitely check them out. Really cool tool there. And this community plan really can help you. Definitely check that out. And they help the meetup happen every Friday. So thank you, Testim, for that. And as I mentioned, Oren is the founder of and CEO of Testim.io. He's also a mentor at Google Launchpad. He's worked at multiple locations like Applitools, Wix, IBM. He's talked to multiple conferences. So like I said, he really knows his stuff. And AI's being a hot topic as well, he can handle your questions there as well. And so let's just get right into it. I see Oren in the green room now. I'm going to bring him in and say hello. Hey, Oren, welcome to the meetup.
Hello. It's such a pleasure to be here again. So much fun all the time.
Awesome. Absolutely. Always love speaking with you. Like I said, you have a lot of knowledge around all these different things that are going on. You also have your pulse on the automation community. I think you know maybe things that people haven't seen yet or where you think the industry is going. So I'd really love to pick your brain on that as well. But before we get into Oren, anything you want to share before you dive into your presentation?
We'll talk about only at the end. We'll talk about what we offer with the new thing that we had for the playground and the puppeteer playground. I'll show that and then only for a few minutes. But I do. It's funny that I did start preparing for one thing, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to talk about the playground, and everyone's saying, wait a second, playground for Playwright. What's Playwright? I'm like, oh. So let me explain what's Playwright, and then people wanted to know what's the difference then between Puppeteer and Playwright, and that turned into the history. I'm just telling the audience how funny that things we got so many questions about the differences and what's the difference between Selenium and Puppeteer and where things are going, and that we kind of decided that okay, let's change it. Let's talk about all those types of frameworks so everyone would know exactly what's the difference between all of them.
Absolutely. So it's a meetup, so we're very agile, so we pivoted, but we're still going to go over a little bit on Playground. But like Oren mentioned, I get these questions asked all the time, and actually having an expert here joining us, I think would be a great time to get your questions in around that, because I think a lot of people are struggling. Like I said, to make this really a great meetup, I just ask you to participate, just ask questions, chat among ourselves, and let's just get into it, Oren. The guild hall doors are open, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. Everyone, and let me Let me share my screen. How do I do this? Yes, you have to help me with that.
Yeah, they keep changing the zoom settings for that.
I
So.
know.
Okay.
And I've changed to 100% zoom for, at the moment.
Right, you should be good.
Awesome.
Awesome.
So thank you, Joe, for the intro. Yeah, I've been playing around with and building tools for developers for the last 22, almost 23 years. So I've seen my share. And also in the last, I think in the last 7 years, I've been usually building platforms using those platforms underneath, under the hood, and we know them very intimately. Testim uses them inside. What we and I'll explain later at the end what Testim does, but basically we're using AI to actually help you with authoring the maintenance. But I want to focus right now on why are there, first of all, so many frameworks out there. So what I keep seeing is that so many people, most people don't even have end-to-end testing, and they're not part of the life cycle. That's what worries me. Not just about number of tests, but first of all, do they trust it? Is it part of the dev lifecycle? Do you release automatically when they pass? Most people still don't. And you see also that the authoring and the maintenance is worrying. People start authoring tests and then they get stuck. So when building kind of like what we should look at, so we were looking at also those kind of things when we're trying to compare all the different frameworks. So a testing framework should do something very simple, right? It should mimic the user actions. And it sounds click, right? It's like sounds very, very simple. All you have to do is click on something. And there's two ways of doing that. One is an exposure, something that the browser will expose in an API to actually to click on something. This is something that you don't usually see. For example, Chrome has the Chrome debugging protocol. So you have a debugger, and that debugger can control the entire Chrome system. And you see that the DevTools actually use that. So everything you see in the DevTools and the Chrome DevTools, this is very similar API to what they're using the same Chrome debugging protocol that other frameworks are using. That's one method. The other method is just basically executing JavaScript on a page. And in the JavaScript, if you're running, one of the API of the debugger is run JavaScript. So if you run JavaScript, you can perform the operation of a click. And I'll explain what's the difference. So when you look, just a little bit of a drill down. So you talk to the driver, and someone needs to talk to the browser, and then the browser, starting from the debugger, the input dispatcher, he goes to the operating system, he finds the element, he says, hey, I want to find this element, I want to click on it. Anything related to the operating system performs everything related to zoom or to find exactly where they want to click. And then there's an event from the operating system, the browser, and then the browser does its calculation. There's events that are making in JavaScript, mouse down, mouse up, etc. Everything, and of course, and a click event. Most applications listen to a click event, even though the operating system doesn't know what a click is. They do mouse down and mouse up, but we'll talk about it in a second. So let's talk about those frameworks and how they differ. Well, Selenium, first of all, Selenium, as you probably know, it's a family of tools. So there's the big difference between Selenium WebDriver. I think it merged Selenium and WebDriver merged in Selenium 2, and now it's Selenium 4. But we're going to talk about that. There's, of course, Selenium Grid, which is the execution environment, how you run in parallel, and Selenium ID, that's the basic record replay application. So Selenium, well, it's the most popular. It's becoming not just that, it became literally a standard. It's a W3C. W3C is that's the consortium of the World Wide Web. So they made into a standard which is called the WebDriver, which says how to talk to a browser. So you'll have support from Core's browser. So what you get out of that is that all the browser can support that. And the way they did it, So you can write in any language. That was another thing that he wanted. You can write in any language, and of course, you can talk to any browser. So the whole idea was creating those protocol that can communicate. Every Chrome drive, for example, every driver, a browser has a driver, and that's the annoying thing, right? I'll talk about it in a second. Every application, every browser has something that knows how to work around it. They listen to the protocol, and then they perform the click. So it's just an HTML, like HTTP standard, because HTTP is the best standard in the world. Everyone knows HTTP, so that's what they used. So they just send a message using an HTTP. Just say, here's the browser. They say to the Chrome grid, for the Selenium grid, give me a browser. They get a browser back. Now they created a session. And then when they have a session, what they're doing is just saying, just give me in that session, find an element, for example, here's an ID, and click on it. Selenium does a bit of two-round. So they first of all, like, find me an element. If you remember the syntax, it's a find an element, then click on it. And those are kind of things that that can generate, can add flakiness. If people know what the stale element exception in Selenium is that when you found an element and then by the time you click on it, that element doesn't exist anymore. But that because the standard says there's two things. One is finding an element. Second thing is I can click on something. So the way that it goes into the browser, they just send the mouse down, mouse up. This is the basic thing that literally the code that executes when you're looking inside the what actually happens. This is what happens. So the Chrome driver, if you remember, I said that every browser has a driver, something that knows how to operate it. They get a click. They say, Selenium says, click on something. Here's an ID. We already found it earlier, the element. I know on it. Now this is my internal ID. Find it and click on it. This is not the ID that you're talking about. This is a kind of an internal ID. So after I found it, I'm saying, hey, click on it. They just report. What they just do is actually they convert this message that we got from the from your code, and they just send it to the browser and say, literally do the click. So as I said, the browser exposed something that's worth that says, oh, this is how you click me. This is how you do mouse down, mouse up, and this is called command. So this is what the browser exposes, and the Selenium driver, the Chrome driver, for example, that's what it does. It can dispatch an event. So they said they don't do a click, they will do a mouse down, mouse up, and this is literally the code that actually performs that. So the Selenium code, if you remember, I told you it's connected. It's actually split into two parts: find element and then the click. And the find element returns a web element. You can hold that reference. You can click. You can call the click method an hour from now. The challenge, of course, is that there's an advantage because you have a reference in your app and you can use it in an hour. But on the other hand, if that element doesn't exist anymore, you'll get the stale element exception. I'm guessing a few people know that. So the amazing thing with Selenium is that it runs on all browsers. There's many drivers. There's many clients. That means you can work in almost every language of your choice. That converts that, as I said, to an HTTP request. And after this gets the HTTP request, there's the driver that actually converts that back into the operation that we wanted. Let's go just a second, go back to C. You say, whether it's Java or JavaScript, you say click, find an element, and then a click. So I just take the click, for example. It converts that into that post message that we saw in HTML. It sends it to it's not the browser, it's the browser driver. And that dispatches, it's connected through what the browser exposes. As we said, for example, with Chrome, that's the remote debugging protocol, and it exposes, sends a command of mouse down and performs a click. So you can see on one hand, this allows us to have multiple languages and multiple browsers, and it's de facto standard. So that's great. That's super awesome. And of course, once you're a standard, means there's a lot of grids out there, and you're all familiar with them, and they're great. The challenge with that approach is when they did that, it's one directional. You tell the browser what to do. It's not bidirectional. It means that the browser can talk to you back. And we'll talk about the other features, but imagine that you want to wait until the browser says there's no network requests. All the network requests are over. Imagine that you want to get notification from the browser every time there's a log, a console log. Like if there's an error, let me know. I want to log that in my reports. So those kind of things are available when you're talking. This is bidirectional. That means the browser can talk to you. Selenium is not bidirectional, but they are working on it. I think the last meeting of the consortium, I think it was 2 days ago, and they are working. It's work in progress. Everyone wants to do that. It will just take time. But this is something super important, and that will help. So let's talk about Cypress. I've been hearing more and more about Cypress. So the focus on Cypress was to give a good developer experience, like an integration. You have pre-installed the environment that you need. In one click, you get started, which I think was a bit lacking for saying with Selenium. Selenium, of course, you need the grids or the standalone. And as you saw, the whole flow is a bit, it's very flexible, but on the other hand, it means that you need to do a lot of things to get started. I think Cypress said, hey, we can fix that. I think there's a better way to get started. But on the other hand, they said, we'll implement it in the way that Selenium 1 was. Selenium 1 was mostly about JavaScript, not about going to the browser in their special API and perform a click. It's just using JavaScript. There's a few disadvantage with that. That means it's Cypress is less cross-browser. They supported Chrome for the first few years. Now they support Firefox. But I think there's a few things that which is called trusted events that you can do in JavaScript. For example, a hover. Hover is not supported in Cypress and probably will never be until the W3 consortium changes to hover. You can do a hover operation with JavaScript, and my guess is that they'll never do that. So those kind of operations are not allowed. This is what we call trusted. There's no multi-tab support at the moment. There's no window support, and it's based. There's more and more, by the way, JavaScript. I think most of the projects, at least the ones I see, and I see hundreds every week, are mostly JavaScript nowadays. I think there's two reasons. Because one, the people that care more about end-to-end testing on the development side is the front-end developers. There's less unit test on the front end, there's more on the back end, and they really care about end-to-end. So if you want the attention of developers, so people pick JavaScript, and JavaScript is becoming a very good language. Like in the debugging and everything, it's just as good as anything else. And of course, there's TypeScript now, so if someone wants type, so it's becoming the number one language for test automation. So in Cypress, Cypress started before there was JavaScript 6 and 7 actually coming out. And they used the approach which is more to make it more comfortable using what they call chaining. So that means you do a get and then a type. JavaScript doesn't allow you to just basically get something, get an element, and type something. It doesn't allow that. And there's a new syntax called async await. That's the way to do that in JavaScript. But that means that this syntax won't be supported. So the challenge here is that they're doing chaining. When you run this test, if I add a breakpoint here, I think I expect to actually to have the get and the check and check something and actually have at least go to my URL. I expect those 4 commands to be executed, but actually it doesn't. I expect it to be in the middle of a test. But what actually what happens is, if I put a breakpoint here, you'll see that there's nothing there. And the reason there's nothing there, because this is when you're running this, it's just chaining all the commands. And when you're done, then it will start executing them. So there is a way, of course, using a debugger, there is a way to debug that and adding breakpoints, but it's just less comfortable, I would say, because it doesn't feel like you're in Java, the latest JavaScript as the other frameworks. Let's talk about Puppeteer. Puppeteer started as an internal at Google when they wanted to automate their own browser, and they wanted an API which is bidirectional, so they started Puppeteer, and they released that. Because Firefox also supported big parts of the Chrome debugger protocol, the CDP, so it was very straightforward to support that, and the connection between the two was actually amazing. I think what happened is that they don't go through a lot of what we saw with Selenium, that you have to go through, it converts to an HTTP request, then it goes through some routing, the grid, Selenium grid, then it converts back to the driver, converts it back to operation, and then performs the click. You're connected directly to the browser using they provide that API above the CDP. This API is for Puppeteer, and you just perform those actions. So it's very straightforward, super fast, and it's really like. But the bottom line, what I want you to understand is that the actual click in Puppeteer and Selenium is the same, because they both go to the Chrome debugging protocol and perform the same click. So bottom line, they both perform the same thing. One goes through some routing and the other is directly. But it's very important that you know that the operations are, bottom line, they're the same. So a click here and a click there is not, the actual click is not different, but actually finding an element, if you can see the API, with Puppeteer, wait a second, see the API, it doesn't mean find an element and then click on it. It's usually, they have such an API, but most people, what they use is you can just say click and give you the locator, the CSS locator in this example. And that means that you can find an element and in the browser automatically click on it. And that saves you the round trip. Then that saves you things like the stale element exceptions. But it's really, if you look at it and they give you the API, and you'll see it's very close to the Chrome debugging protocol, and it's very clear. And there's a reason, because it talks directly to it. So and I show you a few lines of that code. So Puppeteer is super simple to install. Like it's a node package. If you have can install Chrome automatically. It's bidirectional. That means it has. I love those kind of things that you can wait for things in the browser and have it talk to you. I think the cons are lack of browser support. That means it's not a standout. So that means there's no a lot of grids support that yet. By the way, I know that it's work in progress. So that would be, you'll be hearing about most of them very soon. But the cross platform, that's a big. So if you know that you need to support, let's just say IE11, then only Selenium, for example, that's yours. That's your choice. Not Cypress doesn't support that. Puppeteer doesn't support that. But if you need, for example, Safari, then you can go to something like Playwright. So what is Playwright? Playwright, actually, when Google said when Microsoft said that they'll have their Edge being built on Chromium as well. Just a few words on Chromium is the basis of Chrome. Chrome is based on a project, an open source project called Chromium, where most of the code of how they're rendering and the JavaScript engine is there. And they, of course, they add all their capabilities above and all the password management and all the rookie, everything. That's Chrome. And Microsoft has their implementation above it now, which is called their Edge is just implemented above the Chromium. So what they did, they not only took that, but they fork Puppeteer. So they took the actually team that actually worked on Puppeteer. They started working at Microsoft and started adding more things. They can just continue working on it, and they added Safari support. They support WebKit, and they're trying obviously the Chrome base. So that would means also IE Edge also is supported. The new one, not the old one. It works exactly the same. Same thing. You have a socket and you talk to it directly, and that's bidirectional. It looks, I know it looks familiar. It says, hey, this looks like just like Puppeteer. It is very much like Puppeteer. As I said, it's a fork. They had a bunch of stuff. They did the construction. The first thing is a bit different. The way they work and modulate, they're trying to make a difference so you can have even more, and you started seeing that in Puppeteer, but you'll see that even more in Playwright, to have two things running at the same time, talking to the browser. And imagine even right now, the way you talk to the concept of a page. If you guys know Selenium, you probably remember that there's a context that if you want to move from one tab to another, and then you can change the context back to the first one when you want to click on something. You do that for every pop-up that has an OK modal that you have to confirm. You have to go back. Here you just have a notion of a page, and you say, okay, there's one page, there's another page, and you can just reference them whenever you want. So they've kind of like restructured that. They started in Puppeteer, and it improves a lot in Playwright. So the code seems very similar to the Selenium one. I think it's much shorter because you don't have the find element by and I see it. But on the other hand, it's super super robust, super fast. How can I summarize that? They're adding more and more functionality. Their advantage, they're adding more functionality for browser than Puppeteer. And they're adding more support for more thinking about not just automation as a infrastructure, more of a little bit more high level, and think about, oh, wait until an element has some state or is available. Wait until use a CSS selector. Instead of using CSS selector, use find element by text. Those are things that CSS selector. They said that they'll come with CSS4. They've been saying that I've been waiting for 4.5 years. Obviously at Testim we needed to implement this and other things ourselves, because we prefer to use the underlying technology as much as possible, but if something doesn't come out for years, of course we do it ourselves. So I think the way they work with sessions is much easy and clear. I think that's one of their biggest pros. Very easy to set up, comes with Chromium when you install it. The API is great. Very easy to migrate between it and Puppeteer because they're basically 99% identical. As I said, no IE11. They have Safari. No grid system yet. I'm sure people will start supporting that. Vendors will start supporting that very, very fast. So I think it's going to come soon. And by the way, they just released the 1.0. So it's very, very new. I'm not sure if people know, this only came out this year. And they just reached, in the last 30 days, they just reached their 1.0. Yeah, so we build on top of them. And so it's, by the way, this is me. I had Benji Guman help me out. We worked on this. And we research everything, but to take note, this is our point of view. So what we'll try to do now, this part is actually trying to slice it up by a section and actually put everything together based on a section. And don't worry, I'll put it also in a big table. I didn't get to do it now, but we'll probably do an article and put it in a big table, and it will be more comfortable. So you can put in your own weights and actually and see what's best for you. So, but the features, when you're looking at that, what people are looking at, some people might care whether it's cross-browser. So it depends. If you need everything, obvious choice is there. If you don't need support anything, you have more options. If you just need things like Safari, it gives you Puppeteer. Multi-tabs, so Selenium does the work, Cypress doesn't, but Puppeteer and Playwright, they're one notch better. Recordings, well, Selenium comes with the basic recording, but obviously Testim also has the Playwright, we'll talk about it in a second. Cypress doesn't have, it just has in their app to record one specific step, get the locator, so you can use that. You still have to use 100% code as you start building the app. Trusted actions, as you said, like for example, hover. Sometimes things like drag and drop and those kind of things. Cypress is the only one that doesn't use the remote debugging protocol. They just use JavaScript, and that's a big no-no in my book. But it's based on your application. Some people can find a lot of workaround around that, and they did. Parallelization. Selenium is doing an amazing job just because, it's been there for so long and it's a standout. I love that. I'm really looking forward to think whether Playwright and Puppeteer can merge into that standout or have a different standout at level 2. But that would be super great because, and even if it's not a standout, an official standout, but there's de facto standout. If the entire industry will start implementing and supporting the Puppeteer and Playwright, and I think they do. This is where I think this is going. That would work well. I saw that Cypress has someone do something for the non-prem. You have to build your own if you want the grid or use theirs. But if you want to build your own, I saw solely Cypress. That's a nice, very basic, but a nice project that someone did. Speed. So I don't know. People tend to look at it in a different way. Depends on your app. If you have an application that when you click on something, you have to wait for 3 seconds to get the database, the information back. I'm not going to talk about talking about end-to-end right now, and not when you do UI testing and you mock the backend. I'm talking about end-to-end at the moment. So if you talk about end-to-end, I would look at here, the top part. This is more for something that Gouge did, and you're looking at number of, they're assuming there's not a lot of I/O operation that you need to wait 3 seconds for a database or to load the data. So they have different speeds. But in both cases, by the way, Puppeteer and Playwright are the big winners. They're so fast. It's just direct. There's no man in the middle. They just go direct and they do everything. And it's not JavaScript. It's like C-level. Obviously, the one that's most of the code. There's a lot of code in Chrome, which is C. So Selenium is fast. It's super fast. People say it's slow. I disagree. I think it's if you run. If you need to do 1,000 clicks, they can do that in milliseconds. They're like super, super fast. I think most of them are good enough for tests for doing end-to-end. Even though Cypress is faster than Selenium, of course, the fastest by far, that's Puppeteer and Playwright. They go talk to directly. But if you look at the number of operations that they have, you'll see that Cypress is about CPU operations. You'll see that in average, Cypress is a tad slower than Selenium, even though you're saying if it's the application, it's entirely, you don't need to go to the database. Cypress, I think, would be faster than Selenium. In all cases, Puppeteer is the fastest. Bottom line, I don't think it matters if your application needs to click and waits for 3 seconds. It doesn't matter if the operation took 10 milliseconds or 20 milliseconds. But again, it depends on the application. So stability, I think they have waits for, and obviously the API for Selenium is a pretty old one, but they did a lot of things, and there's the community did a lot of things. So it's, you can search and you can ask around. Not in the ideal. I see some progress right now from Playwright that they're starting, for example, add things automatically wait for. So they're improving on that. That's improved the stability of your test. That automatically, if you less writing code that acts with the stability. Obviously, we tested. We had a lot of code, the reason mechanism. We've done that for years, and of course, using multi-locator and stuff like that. But when you look at the bare metal, I'm talking about infrastructure. Those things are finally we're seeing some progress. So I love that. The only one that I see, again, smart locators, I mean, use multi-attributes to find an element, not just one, because then when you change a property, the text, and then or class or an ID, you change it and it breaks. Using several of them, Playwright again started to add their own support for custom selectors. So I love that they added the text one already. Nice progress. Debugging. Of course, Puppeteer and Playwright, I think they're big. They're the big winners. Everything's really straightforward. I told you why I personally don't feel so warm about the Cypress type of solution. I think it would have been great 4 years ago, but now I'm expecting to have the latest JavaScript, just have a debugger, go to the IDE at a breakpoint, and this should work. You stop there, you stop in the middle of the test. I think today, this is what I want to run. Sometimes when I want to run it from my Visual Studio, I want to add a breakpoint, it should work. Self-healing tests, people don't support that yet. Only companies that work above those frameworks like Testim. So I didn't see any change in that. Would be nice to see. Docs, Selenium is amazing. So many docs, tutorials are amazing. There's a great buzz around Cypress, and you see more. I don't like the fact that Puppeteer doesn't have a lot of docs, and the community is not that huge. Playground community is tiny, but it's growing fast. I don't like the fact that the API was changing, but I know it's 1.0. It might stop changing, and they won't have breaking changes. So I hope that would be great. Autonomous testing, that's the part when you can, how can I understand automatically from production, creating the test automatically for you, and how can I have 1,000 testing within 2 days? None of them still support those kind of things. They're very low level. So just want to make sure people understand the difference. They're not going to give you coverage. They're not going to give you create a test. Those are things are still going to be in probably an application running above those. And now, just wanted to introduce what Testim did, the Testim playground. Show you. So what we did, we wanted to give back to the community. We're always thinking about what else can we help. So this was when Playwright was there, and someone asked in the on GitHub. They asked, "Is there a recorder?" And said no. I said there wasn't. So we looked at it and said, wait a second, we're in the last 6 years we've been doing the best recordings out there and creating tests which are more stable than code. And obviously that's something that we can do very easily. And we did. We added something. So if you go to the URL testim.io/playwright recorder, I'll send the link, and you can record something. I can just do it. I can see the code happening live. Let's do this. Scroll a bit. Let's click on stuff. And the nice thing is now I can see the code that was generated. Let me zoom in a bit. You can see the code that was generated with Playwright. If I do the same, by the way, with Puppeteer, you'll see there's a different page for the Puppeteer playground. You'll see, by the way, that the code was generated it's very similar. A few things that is different, like the context and the page would be, as I said, that's the Playwright work on what is the context and how to use those kind of things. So how do you navigate between pages? So that would be the big difference. Here you'll see something very simple. You'll see the code. We added a few things, like for example, if you want to validate or if you want to scroll to an element, things that usually you need to write some code, we added that it's going to add those code for you. So then you can click copy, or if you want to click play, you just You can run the test. If you would, this way you can run it and play around with it even before you even. Well, you can see, by the way, how super fast it is. So you can play around. Same thing with Puppeteer. And something wasn't released yet. It was just when we were building this. I started adding. It will come out next week. That you'll have a different. What is the how do you check the selectors? So, for example, if you ask, for example, Google Chrome, if you go and right click and do, oh, give me the selector, it usually gives you very long selectors. I think that they cause a flakiness. So we added our own selectors, and you'll have next week also like the toggle, so between the different types of selectors. Testim knows, our expertise is to know how to find the best selectors, so hopefully this will be short, and you can just copy this. This is a full-fledged working test. Copy it to your file system, and you can run it. But Testim, when you click play, will show you the command to actually just also install to install everything you need. So it's just one line. You copy that to your terminal, and you're done. So this is the playground. As I said, this is some things free that anyone can use, so they can generate more Puppeteer and Playwright tests. I think they're great frameworks. If you've been listening for the last 40 minutes, I love them. They've been doing a great job, and we're trying to help the community as they use them. By the way, we did add Testim, our Codeless. Testim has also a coded and a Codeless where we help with the AI. I just added, so when you click record, it will not only just record it here, it will just show you also the code list. You can edit the code here. So if you want to add something or remove something, and if I remove it here, it will remove it from here. So this is not a full-fledged editor. This is here. This is just, you can copy paste. It's just a line of code. But if you do want to edit something or add special validation and stuff, you can move here, and here you have the Testim editor, a preview which is again free. So you can add everything that you want. If you want to create a group, a reusable component, just select those. Just select those steps and group it, and say, oh, let's group it and call it a login. So those kind of thing. What I also like is, like, here you can see when you run it, you can see the screenshots and things, and of course the logs, the errors, the HAL files that were generated. This is what was recorded. This is what was played, and you get a lot of reports and other things that the infrastructure frameworks don't provide. So feel free to check out Testim Codeless as well. But I hope that people would use the Testim playground and play around with Puppeteer and Playwright. They're awesome. Let me just see if I have. So I think as I'm going to leave some time. I want to leave some for questions. So there's different trade-offs. So it depends on what you want, and I love the fact that right now you're starting to have the option to mix and match also. So I think there's coming more and more, so you can play with Selenium, but can also run Puppeteer code when needed. So that would be a nice match. Which I feel free to try, and you'll see that there are going to come more and more frameworks that support that. That's it for me, and I'm really happy to answer your questions. Testim is always is hiring. You can check our website, testim.io/career, or just email me, and I'll be happy to help out. Thank you.
Awesome stuff, Oren. You covered a lot of stuff, so I just want to dive in. We got a few questions in already. First one's from Mander. He wants to know, thanks, Oren, for this question. How is flakiness for UI scripts on Playwright as compared to the other tools?
So when you say flakiness, so you need to understand what are the things that cause, and then sometimes there's different types of flakiness. Some people say it's because they didn't add a wait for, just wait for the element. So sometimes it's going to be randomly happening. So the nice thing is that they added a few things that you can wait implicitly for an element to be visible before you click on it. There's things like that. And there's other things in their syntax when they said, instead of finding an element and clicking on it, just clicking on it. That's another example of something that Playwright and Puppeteer did, and said, I don't want to separate that between finding an element and then 100 milliseconds after clicking on it. I want to do both operations at once, find it and click on it at the same time. So those are things that really were helpful. The flakiness, there's no such thing. I think there's a lot of, Selenium had a bad rap. Some are justified like this. Some weren't justified about things that are, that internet goes away. And Selenium, I think, is a great platform, great framework. It's super stable. I think a lot of places people blame Selenium for a lot of things where the test can be, it's just challenging to write tests, guys. It's hard. It's hard to write good end-to-end tests. So you have to work on it, but Playwright that definitely helps with that.
Yeah, so I always say this, I sound like a grumpy old man, but I used to use WinRunner and QTP, and people would say, oh, those tools are flaky, let's go to Selenium. And now you're hearing the same thing about Selenium. Selenium's flaky, let's go to Cypress. It's the same thing. Drives me nuts. Exactly. But why is it so hard? All you do is driving a browser. I mean, we develop nuclear software for nuclear weapons, and it doesn't seem as difficult to get a developer to write a script that navigates your web page.
So I think it's getting there. AI is getting more and more into a point of people are investing more and more in test automation. I think the importance of test automation in the last few years has boomed, and people are doing a lot of research, just like testing, doing a lot of research to actually help out with that and making things that you just want to click this, consider it done, and not having this being so tedious just to click an element and being flaky. So I think the world is improving. We're in the right way, and there's already a huge improvement in the last few years.
So I want to dive into that a little bit more, but I want to get to the questions. Kellyanne says, is it only JavaScript on tools like Playwright and Puppeteer? It seems like all these newer tools, they just use JavaScript. So maybe that's a trend that people should learn JavaScript. I hate the syntax, but just my thought.
So yes, most of the frameworks coming out are JavaScript. I would highly recommend learning JavaScript. Now, by the way, JavaScript has classes. There's also TypeScript, so if you want to have types. So it's not going to be, even the syntax is not going to be so different what you're accustomed with Java, for example. Obviously, it's more close to, if people know, say, Python and Ruby, it's a bit closer, but Java right now is getting better and better every year.
So, Oren, we have another question. Harsha wants to know, Harsha, you may have to clarify this because I'm not sure I know what you're talking about exactly. It says, how's the failure scenario handled and reported back? I'm not sure what tool he's speaking of, but I guess in Puppeteer
I think there's different. Yeah, let's explain. So there's a difference between the infrastructure that knows how to click and talking to the browser, and there's the reporting. So none of those, I think just Cypress a bit is trying to build on top of their own infrastructure a little bit of reporting, but usually it's everyone builds it on their own. And just like Testim has a full mechanism, of course, and reporting so you can understand about their failures. Some people have, for Selenium, some are the grid providers, some provide, but also some of the things like the Allori framework that have basic reporting, but you build your own. Testim, for example, I'll give you an example. Testim built something that if you have 100 failures, it would say there's 2 issues. 70 tests failed because of this, and 30 failed because of that. You can look at the stack trace, you can look at where it failed, and understand that this is the same failure, the same login that caused the failure here and here, and save you time. So everyone's building, I think this is where the commercial companies come in, and they build on top of that the reporting mechanism.
So I know a lot of people are a little confused between Puppeteer and Playwright. I think Playwright is a fork of Puppeteer, but the team that created Puppeteer went to Microsoft, and they're the ones working on Playwright. I don't know if I'm even following correctly, but is that what happened?
That's what happened, yes. So people are working, by the way, on Puppeteer right now, still in Google. We got new folks and they're working on it. And I see the more progress, I would say, on the Microsoft side. They're releasing like every 5 minutes, new thing. I love that.
Absolutely. Oren,
Yeah.
we have another question from SQL Cloudburst. They want to know, are there issues with finding and interacting with elements in Playwright where an element would not be clickable with Selenium or by a user in a browser?
So even when you talk about Selenium, let me just say one thing, because we use Selenium underneath the hood, so we looked at Selenium in all different browsers. Even when you say Selenium is a standard, it's nice in theory, but then when someone implements the implementation of a click is different within one browser as opposed to another, you see that. I'll give you an example. When a button is half shown, and when you need a click on it, whether is it considered on the screen or not considered on the screen, this is where the standard is a bit vague, and one browser in Selenium would act one thing and another would act differently. So this is where the standard would be nicer. But things like scrolling automatically to an element to view that, forcing that with the syntax, I think Playwright force has an option when you click force. I think it's force. You can add an attribute force equals true, and they will force an action. I know that because we testing, we saw that in hundreds of different projects, and we added it ourselves a couple of years ago to see that that Playwright was actually doing that. They understand who their users are, testers and QA engineers and developers, and they want to test, and added those capabilities.
Great. So Oren, another question from Hasha wants to know, any plans for Testim to support hierarchical views?
We have, Testim is doing so much. So Testim will support, there's a lot of things already, everything that I mentioned here. Testim, obviously we support that. We try to build on top of those two, that means to add more. For example, when you're talking about locators, why use one single locator when you can use everyone, and you can improve. The more you run your test, the test can improve different things, different tabs, different windows, and running them in parallel. And there's so many things that were added. And there's so many things that actually, regarding the autonomous testing, that will start releasing in the next few months. So you should look forward to seeing more soon.
Great. Sarita wants to know, any plans for Testim to support multiple browsers using Cypress?
So wait a second, that's a trick question. Cypress doesn't support multi-browsers. We Testim does support all the, at least I think IE11, Firefox, Chrome, obviously, and Safari, and Edge. But and I think we stopped at 11. But obviously, but we're using Cypress. I didn't understand the question there, but Cypress itself doesn't support other browsers besides Chrome and Firefox. They might work on that. I think the challenge is, I don't think there's a need to compete with the browser manufacturers. I think that's what I like about Playground and Puppeteer and Selenium, that works with them and not reinvent the wheel. I think that's one of the big disadvantage of Cypress.
So you did mention something that was kind of interesting. Actually, before I get to my question, we have another question from Ninja Turtle. Wants to know, with Selenium, I can execute JS on the client. Is that supported with Playwright? General question, but I couldn't Google for it.
So what was it? Maybe you can elaborate a bit. You can run code either in Node.js, and this is talking to the browser directly, and you can inject code that actually will run in the browser very easily. If that's what you meant.
Believe so. And Ninja Turtle,
it's
if that's not right.
The syntax, by the way, is very incredible. It's just run, and you pass in some code, and that's it. It's just, you don't have to, like in Java. I remember in Selenium, you have to write a string full of a big line of JavaScript that will be injected. It's like, no, it's just your lines of code. You just say run, and this is the code, and that's it. It's just part of the framework.
Yeah, it also seemed like we had a scenario where I used to work with a radiologist application where they have to bring up multiple. They log in as one type of radiologist and log in again and see what the view, if it was locked, a study. And with Selenium, it was very difficult to get that synced up. But it sounds like using Playwright, that would be a ideal user case for it.
Yes, that's an example. It makes it easier. Yeah.
Great. So another question is from I'm terrible with names. Hamanashu. They want to know for browser capability. Compatibility testing, should we consider multiple versions of same browser to say that our application works fine for a particular browser? So I don't know if they're talking about different like Chrome versions or things like that.
I think they are, and I think this is the kind of like the question that we kind of like get back to you. This is where you need to decide. Depends on the application. If, for example, if IE, for example, there's the new Edge, which is Chromium based. There's the previous Edge, and there's IE even 11, and I'm not even mentioning the one before. So if your customers, that's why I love talking to production, see what's going on in production, and I guess we'll see that more and more. If you go to production, you understand what your user. Just use Google Analytics. If you understand what your user are using, if everyone is using IE11. You have to use different versions. I'm from Chrome, of course, but that's just an extreme with the IE. If your users are using that, you have to test that. If you're not, then testing is just for you to understand what's the risk in making the release. So if you feel comfortable, then I think this will help you be comfortable whether that's enough or not.
Okay, we're getting close to running out of time. I want to respect Oren's time. He's a busy guy, as you notice. They're always coming up with new releases, for sure, new functionality. But Oren, another question is, it's from Fadit. They want to know, have you ever thought to create a cloud to do simplified cross-platform testing as Testim, where users provides device and browser information that you can run their test?
I'm not sure I understood that. It was a very long sentence.
Yeah.
But if you're referring to understand what's going on in production in the cloud for in the application, then yes, we are working on that, and hopefully there's going to be a release soon with that.
Very cool. So Louise wants to know, are there any main differences between Testim versions, community versus professional?
We try to make it so the community started. The COVID started, and we wanted to say, okay, there's companies that right now can't afford. So we wanted to give a community that so they can still test, even though COVID really was hard on a lot of companies. There was not a lot of differences. We provide even the browser. So if you get those 1,000 tests, that means you even get the browsers to run them. So they're all for free. So feel free to sign up and try it out. You get everything. I think there's one thing which is the coded version of Testim, which is not automatically included. Testim is there's two things. There's the visual editor that gives you, what I said, all the screenshots, etc. And there's an editor which an SDK that runs in your you can build it in your own IDE like VS Code. So there's some small part of that wasn't in it, but besides that, I think everything is into the community. Everything, including the support. We're really trying to help people with their testing.
Very cool. Thank you, Oren. Like I said, I want to respect your time. We're at 4, and all the questions have been answered. Before we go, any parting words of wisdom you want to leave the guild?
First of all, I'm looking forward to your performance guild next week. That's one thing that I'm looking forward to. And just want to say to everyone, I think I see a lot of people are trying to pick a framework right now, and it's very important. So if there's more questions on how and why, and if you have more, feel free to ask us, or to ask me, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you'll find me, just Google, and I'll be happy to answer and help out. And that's it.
Awesome. Thanks again, Rubin, for your awesomeness, and also Oren, and also thank you for. I don't know why I keep calling you Rubin. What's wrong with me? So Oren, like I said, yeah, thank you for everything you've done, and also for supporting the meetup. So I really appreciate Testim. Really love what you all are doing down there. So thanks so much.
You're welcome. So everyone, again, feel free, try Testim and give it a shot. Thank you.
Awesome.
See you, everyone.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
so much. Cheers. All right, so it was Oren Rubin. Awesome guy. Like I said, if you ever see him at a conference, you definitely want to stop by and say hello. He's always working on something, and he has a cool demo usually going on with some new feature that they just implemented. So really cool guy, really cool technology, really cool company. All right, so before we go, I just want to remind you, shameless plug, we have the Perf Guild going on. This is an online conference dedicated 100% to performance testing. I know it's a smaller niche, but I think as we've seen with COVID-19, I've seen a lot of sites go down because of their performance, because they weren't able to really anticipate the different kinds of interactions their site was going to have due to the way users were using it due to COVID-19. So they have spikes in the traffic and their site went down. There's multiple sites like Robinhood, which is a financial app that went down for a whole day, lost the users basically millions of dollars. There were government agencies that have gone down because of people trying to get unemployment checks or special grants for their businesses have gone down. Gaming companies have gone down when they release free versions of their game, but they didn't realize more people are home playing games, so the sites went down. So I really think it's an important part of testing, and I think if you're a tester, performance testing is really important. So definitely check out Perf Guild going on this Monday and Tuesday. And for staying all the way to the end to this meetup, if you use the code GuildCoin50, that's GuildCoin50, you'll get $50 off your ticket price when you register at perfguild.com. I do have to say I'm having an issue with my site right now. It's kind of ironic, but I think I'm getting hacked on one of my other sites and it's impacting the other one. So I'm going to take care of it right away. But like I said, definitely check out Perf Guild. Go to perfguild.com and use the code GuildCoin50 to get $50 off your ticket price. And so I'll see you all next week. Really thank you for all your questions. And just a reminder, this edition of the Test Guild meetup was sponsored by Testim. Testim really does like to give back to the community. As we mentioned, they do have a really cool free community version, a community plan, which includes 1,000 runs per month. Definitely register there. I'll have a link down below in this stream after the event. So if you actually registered for this conference during through my site, I'll send a link to the recording as well as a link to for you to get the community version, or just head on over to Testim right now and check out the community version there and sign up. So thank you all. Really appreciate you. And I will see you next week, same time. Thanks so much for all the awesomeness and the questions you've given us today. Cheers.